Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today is Monday, September 12th, 2022. I am Solid Blue Sister, and this is My Turn to Talk. Welcome, Bara. You're number one, and Brina, welcome. You are number two. And Frankie, you're pulling it up with number three. And to everyone over on YouTube, who, if you are listening on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, welcome, welcome. And I'm just going to let this play a little longer before I get started. Let's see. Welcome, HAM. Thank you, Brina, for sharing the show. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to stop it here. Okay, so today, before I get started, and I know I'm going to have to repeat it as more people come in, this topic may be, it could get tense, it could get sensitive. So, and it may be labeled as one of those shows that Solid Blue does. But I wanted to make this announcement before the show. I don't know where the show is going to go in terms of, thank you, Brina, in terms of, what people are going to say, what people are going to think. I am going to try to stay very much on topic, and this will be an hour show. My shows are not going to go longer than an hour. So, I will try to stay on topic as much as possible. If people disagree and push back, that's fine. Just know that if I want to disagree and push back, I will do the same. If others disagree and push back, either on the panel or on the chat, that is fine. So, having said that, I'm going to get started. And as my topic says, book banning is it curbing freedom of speech? Have people even read the books that are being banned? Do parents even care, or is it all about an agenda? And I also want to know, Germany banned books during World War II. Will America soon follow suit? What are people afraid of? So these are some of the questions that I have. And just so you know, book banning has been, I know y'all tired of me saying this, but it is true. It's been a topic that I've had since even before I came on to Podbean. And I'm like, yeah, do I want to do it? No. Am I going to do it? No. Yes, no, whatever. But it is something that is in the news, and it is something that is being talked about, especially since the new school year has begun. Welcome, Mr. B, and welcome, Noam. So, I want to start off with, when you say freedom of speech, and people have different views of freedom of speech. I mean, people have different views of everything. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, um, you know, what do they say? If you see a car accident, six people will stand there, and everybody sees it six different ways. So is it curbing freedom of speech? And one of the things that I always question is, have people even read the books that are being banned? Now, growing up, um, I went to, for elementary and for high school, I went to a Lutheran school. And believe it or not, there were a lot of books, that we had to read that may seem questionable, whatever. But those are books that we had to read. Um, and this is, in elementary school. I read Huckleberry Finn. And if you read Huckleberry Finn, you know some of the, language and some of the over the tone of that book. But before I go forward, I wanted to just put this in here for you. And you may or may not agree, but I wanted to copy and paste so you guys have it, but I will read it. It says the legal standard for banning books. The Supreme Court set the standard for banning books in 1982. Island Tree School District versus Pico. I do remember that. It's an interesting case, and you guys may or may not want to check it out. But in that case, the school board attempted to ban a number of books because they were anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and just plain filthy, including such titles as Slaughterhouse-Five, The Naked Ape, Down These Mean Streets, Best Short Stories of Negro Writers, and Go Ask Alice. I can say that I have read every single one of those books, and I read them all in school. Afterwards, I read them on my own. So I have read the books that are in question. Some of them are risque. Some of them are not. But they all tell about life. So having said that, I will start there. You all know my questions. So welcome, Daddy Hoff. So having said that, what do you guys think? I mean, do you think that book banning is soon going to be book burning? Books like, Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. I read that book twice. I read it in high school. I read it in college. It was required reading, and, whether or not, my opinion is there are some books out there that are just downright just evil. There are some books that are filthy, there are some books that, that are very sexual. There are some books that are racist. There are some books that are very violent. But, who says that you should not have this book in a classroom where you don't want one group of people to learn about this, but is it denying another group of people to learn about it? So it's like, to me, you're almost in a catch-22. Welcome, DMAC. So, again, those are some of the questions that I have, and I will say, and this is one thing that, I just kind of shake my head at, is I really want to know that when these books, especially when you hear about, parents going to school board meetings and they're going back and forth, one side of the room is saying this, the other side of the room is saying that. No matter what side you're on, either pro or against a particular book, have you read it? Because I personally don't think that a lot of people have, and this is just my own opinion, I could be totally wrong, but I personally don't think that a lot of people have read the books that people are talking about, that people are saying, no, don't read this. Well, yes, we should read it. Well, no, we shouldn't. Yes, we should. So on both sides, I say, have you read the book? And if you read the book, what is the book entailing? What is there a moral? What is it? Some people could say, that Huckleberry Finn, is one of the most racist books ever. When you read the book, it's full of that book is full of so much racist stuff. But at the same time, you can say, well, no, it's also a book about the friendship between this white boy and this black slave. you know, but at the same time, you can say, well, yeah, but um, when you look at the book and how it was written, it was taken from people, even though it's technically fiction, it was still taken from like real life things. And the, person who was portrayed as Jim, the slave, he may have been, yes, sir, no, sir, whatever, smiling everything. But he wasn't, when at the end of the day, when he went home, he wasn't thinking the happy thoughts about Huck. So, you know, when you read a book, everyone's going to get something different. Everyone's going to take away something different. Just like when you see a movie, you may take away this, I may take away that. Books are subjective. But again, I say there are some books that are just downright filthy. There are some books that are just downright violent, racist, whatever. There are books that are like that. But again, one of my first questions is, have you read the book? Is there agenda? Is there an agenda out there to get rid of these books? Is there an agenda out there to keep books on the shelves? Why did Germany, burn books during World War II? And some of the books, that they banned. America is always talking about freedom of speech, but at the same time, is banning books freedom of speech? Is it curbing freedom of speech? Okay, I've been running my mouth, so let's see. Brina says books can be written in an influential way or in an informative way. We know enough about psychology to know how it may impact small minds. You're absolutely right. I don't disagree with you that there, Brina. But I do ask this: while you have books that are kept out of schools, out of the younger grades, say kindergarten, and I'm just throwing these grades out there. Say kindergarten through fourth grade. But you still have these little kids come to school saying things to other children that aren't nice, that can be found in these books. So even if you're not learning this stuff at, through a book, a lot of this stuff people are learning at home. So if you're, or if you're around people, whatever, who are throwing around certain things, whatever, whether it be racial, whether it be sexual, whether whatever, I mean, come on. So welcome, GP Man. Welcome, Shy Lady. So I do agree with you, but I'm going to play both sides and say you do have kids that are going to school saying, this and that, so okay. And Brina says, yeah, I'm on the fence on this one. And yes, and it is a topic where you can be on the fence because there are some things that you say, oh, it can't be that bad, whatever. But could it? And then again, and you look at, let's see, let me go back here. Hold on for a second. Some of the most challenging books that are out there, okay, we were just mentioning The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Many people object to his treatment of African Americans, including the use of a racial slur. The Catcher in the Rye contains profanity and prostitution. To Kill a Mockingbird. How many people have read To Kill a Mockingbird? Profanity and racial slurs. I mean, The Catcher in the Rye. I read that. That was required reading in 6th grade for me. And this is at a Lutheran school. Okay, The Lord of the Flies. How many people had to read The Lord of the Flies? Profanity, racial slurs, and taking. Profanity, sexuality, racial slurs, and excessive violence. That book was so embedded in violence. Of Mice and Men, profanity, racial slurs, and taking the Lord's name in vain. The Color Purple, explicit sexuality, profanity, violence, and the use of drugs. I got to go back and check that one because I've read that book twice. Got to check on that use of drugs. The Harry Potter series. Some people fear it will draw children to the occult, and others object to the violence it portrays. Now, at one point, my church was pushing back on Harry Potter. I can honestly say I've never read Harry Potter. I've never been interested in it, not because of what's in the book. The book itself, I mean, it just seems boring to me. So I've never read Harry Potter. Slaughterhouse Five, profanity, violence, and explicit sexuality. I have read the Slaughterhouse Five. The Bluest Eye, profanity, sexual references, and unsuitable for students. The Bluest Eye. I read this book in seventh grade. I had to read it again when I was a junior in high school, and I had to read it again. It was required reading when I got to college. So, so what do you say? Okay, Brina says, I think it's important to expose the kids to different things, but it's also important to give context. Yes, it is. Let's see, Shy Lady is greeting everyone. Thank you guys for liking the show. Okay, Daddy Hoff, are you saying Harry Potter really? Oh my God, on the required, I mean, on the books that are challenged, or me having not read any of the books. I've never even seen the movies. Just some about Harry Potter. I'm just not interested. Um, let's see. Most of those books were required reading for me. Yeah, and Shy Lady, and we're always talking about books. We're always talking, about books that we had to read, whatever. Welcome, Crucible. And Brina says, no Harry Potter for me either. Okay. GP says, our modern day musicians, actors, and entertainment people use bad language and have sexual content available for the public worse than books from the past. I agree. I agree. So while you're, banning books, just go on TikTok, or look at a music video, and the music videos, and in terms of the sexuality of musicians, that goes back way back, so I mean, even for some people can even say Elvis was accused of being too sexual, and that was back in the 50s. So Brina says great point, and I think that is a great point. So again, I've run my mouth. Does anyone else? I mean, does anybody want to pop up on the panel with me? If not, I will keep going, but I will iterate again. This is an hour show. So if you all, I'm not going to let anybody come up on the panel 10 minutes before, because I want to make sure that I do that this is an hour show. So if anybody wants to pop up, pop up. Let's see. Hold on. Boz says, as freedom of speech absolutionist, I am against banning any books at all. However, I'm also against the government forcing children to read books that teach them lies or hate. Well, I understand the whole thing about teaching lies or hate, but in a book, if it's history, and if it is, I mean, if it's history, then there may be some hate in there. If the word slavery is in a book and people take offense to that, and you think, I'm not saying that you do, Bob, but if a person thinks that it is teaching hate, well, it's also part of history. So that's another point to bring up. While you're banning certain books or keeping certain books out of the classroom, is it denying other people to learn their history? And when you are learning history about a certain person or about a certain time in history, hold on, Crucible, I missed that. Are you uh, leaving out things that should. If you're going to talk about someone, talk about them. You know, if you're going to erect a statue, don't just put the good things, talk about the statue, you know? So, and just so anyone knows, so I can, and I've said it before, you all, and I'm going to put this up, even though well, no, I'm not going to say that because we'll get into an entirely different subject. GP says, if you ran a school district, would you ban some books? Honestly, GP, I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't because I cannot ban. Like for instance, they want to ban Be Loved, you know, by Toni um, Morrison. I don't think that half people even read it or even know what it's about. You know, and when you ban books like again, and Crucible, I do know you are there. Give me a moment. When you ban a book like uh To Kill a Mockingbird, or the best short stories of Negro writers, a lot of those writers are talking about life. And as we all know, life is different. Life is different for some people and not others. But I miss you there, so hold on. So Crucible, welcome.
Hello, Sal. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about this. I'm kind of in Boz camp, and you and I, Sal, have talked about this topic before. And there are so many modern day implications of book banning and put another way, censorship. And I believe, as I've said this before, so I'm trying to be consistent. I believe people who want to ban books or try to eradicate history, they're clearly uncomfortable with some elements of it, as am I. I just recently started rereading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. My sister and her husband are starting a little book club, and they happen to have this thing laying around last weekend. And they said, hey, if you want to start reading something, try this. So I just recently started reading it, and it is very jarring. The language is very uncomfortable to read, and as Brina said correctly, you have to apply context. And even though I understand this book was written 150 years ago and things have changed dramatically, I still can't stomach some of the words and some of the hateful cruelty directed at some of the African Americans in the book. But I have to remember, that was the way people talked and behaved back then. That's not to say I'm condoning it, not in the slightest, but that was the historical perspective of how people lived, thought, behaved, and spoke. Now, fast forward to 2020, we had a lot of unrest and a lot of riots back in that summer. As a subset of that situation, all kinds of statues were taken down and put in storage all across the country. Certainly where I live in Chicago, it was rampant. Those statues are still in storage. They're still trying to figure out if they should bring them back or not. The overwhelming sentiment here in Chicago, at least, is don't bring them back. Now, I feel that by erasing or trying to pretend parts of history didn't happen doesn't fix the future. And since we have taken those statues down, not one cultural issue has been brought to the surface and solved because we no longer can look at those statues. It's putting our heads in the sand and pretending we fixed the problem when all we're doing is trying to avoid it. So I think anything that you're banning is a form of censorship. Let it all out there, let it breathe, let everybody take it in. There's a lot of lessons in some of that rough language. There's a lot of things to take away from that. History is our friend, whether we are comfortable with it or not. So I'm a very strong absolutist on banning books, just like Bahram is, and I just don't think it solves or fixes anything.
Okay, and Crucible, I am going to say I was not going to bring up the statue thing, but since you mentioned it, I will say I am, someone who is against taking down statues. I understand what they represent. I have had gone back and forth with some of my friends on this. Um, I mean, really pushing back on me pushing back on them. I do not believe any of those statues should have come down because they are part of history. And my thing is while you're, you know, celebrating Robert E. Lee as a great general, also talk about everything else that he did. To me, that's a perfect opportunity to say, well, yeah, he did this and this and this, but this is what he also did, and he was responsible for this. He was responsible for this. You know, Christopher Columbus. I've talked about him before. Well, everybody's talking about that he discovered America, which he did not. You know, he did not land in America. You know, but go back to look at his own diary and read how horrible of a man that he was. But we have a whole day set out for him. You know, so I am 100% for keeping statues up. I am 100% that if you're going to have a statue of anybody, be it Martin Luther King, you know, be it Malcolm X, whatever, tell the entire story about that person. If I have to sit there and read or send my child to school to learn about George Washington, he was just not, you know, the first president, whatever. He also had slaves, you know. So let's talk about everything.
No, you make some excellent points, Solid. I was going to say the same thing. The world back then, as it is today, is filled with imperfect people. And they are studies in contrast. They are studies in conflict. There are so many historical people who have done good things. And I was going to bring up that very point that you just did, that actually people in both political parties trying to end the scourge of slavery back in the 1850s and 60s actually were current or former slave owners themselves. We are all filled with such contradictions. Christopher Columbus did a lot of really good things, but you're right, he was a skunk. The guy was a scoundrel. And the list goes on and on and on and on. But you have to take their attributes with the negatives as well, because we all have things in us that we are not necessarily particularly proud of, maybe not to the extent that Christopher Columbus and some of those historical figures behaved. But again, back then, this was considered normal behavior. Anytime you take something out of historical context, it's going to be askew. So you have to be consistent, but I agree 100% with you. We're not solving anything. I think we're better served shining a light on it and bringing to light. I bet most people don't know the real true history of Christopher Columbus. I probably don't know it. I know a little bit more than a lot of people, but I certainly don't know the whole story. But is there something to be taken away from knowing the full Christopher Columbus as opposed to whitewashing the stuff we don't like and propping him up as some great hero when in fact he was a very complicated guy?
Well, one thing that I will say, and I'm going to move on to buy, is Christopher Columbus. Again, read his diary. Christopher Columbus did nothing good, and that is from, again, read his diary in his own writing, in his own words. Ba, welcome.
Hi. Am I coming in okay?
Yes, you are. You're
Yeah.
a bit soft, but yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
So I guess I'm just a little bit confused. Would you ban any books? Are you against any books at all, or are you? What's your stance there?
Well, I mean, again, I have not read every single book that has been written.
Mhm.
You know, but I have read books, and the books that I have come across from what they are saying they are banning in our schools. No, I wouldn't, because
Yeah.
um I have read the majority of those books. So before people get on the bandwagon and say ban a book, I just say read the book first. And from the books that I have
Yeah.
seen, I can only answer that way. From the books that I have seen that they want to ban is the only way that I can, uh, you know, that I have read those books.
Yeah.
Victoria, hold on, I miss you there. So go on, Ba.
No, it was only. I'm just a bit confused because our very first Friendly Differences episode was on freedom of speech, and if I recall correctly, Crucible and I were freedom of speech absolutists, where I believe you and Shy Lady were. Oh, there's echo. You and Shy Lady, and I think even Chill was a little bit against some of the speech because it has, consequences, and the rhetoric that people can spew out can cause.
Can we put that in context?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I feel there's a little bit of confusion on my part, because I stand, consistent on freedom of speech. I think there's no book in the world, regardless whether I've read it or not, that I would ban. Where I draw the line is when the government education system basically forces, because other than your parents pulling you out of school, you're basically being forced to read certain books, and whether those books are factually correct or whether they are, but they are full of hate and promoting hate. And I mean, I don't know why you would fight back on that, where I believe if white children are being taught about slavery, you're only increasing the chances that more white people could become racist. Because if you're teaching kids of a young age that black people were seen as inferior, then they might go out into the classroom, into the playground, and start picking on more black children because of what they're being taught. Because kids are obviously not as clever as adults, and I think banning would be definitely a strong word. Where, to me, I think what's going on just now is just that they're choosing not to teach these books in school. The books aren't being banned. You can still go to public libraries or wherever and pick these books up. So that's where I would put my stance for that.
Okay, Bob. First, I want to say that this is where I have a problem, because you said that you're encouraging white children to go out and do whatever, but slavery was a part of our history. So by not talking about slavery in school, we still, and when I say we, I'm talking about children of color, whether they be Latino, Asian, Black, whatever. We still have a right, Native American, we still have a right to be taught our history. So I understand what you're saying, but on one hand, it's, saying, this white child is not going to learn something because they may go out and do that. And if they do, it's like, well, what kind of child are you raising? But on the other hand, don't we have a right? Don't our children have a right to know their history? Slavery was a part of our history. And again, by not teaching it, to me, it's like you want it to go away.
No, I would say mainly because there's only so much days that we're in school. There's only so much history that you can teach. And I don't think that it's a good thing to teach about slavery, which is a very dark and hot, full of, there's a lot of hate in that subject. And when you're going to teach young kids about that, I don't think any good can come of it. Maybe when they're older. But I mean, when I went into school and learned history, all I was ever taught was about Adolf Hitler and about William Wallace. Those were the two main subjects that you get taught. And if you take history in further years, when you become 13, you get asked, you want to do geography, history, or what's the other one? There's another one, and you get to pick between those three. Oh, modern studies, which is like politics. And I chose geography. I'm kind of gutted. I wish I'd chose history. But those were the two. So there's only so much history that we can teach in a limited amount of time. And I just think that, teaching children about the hatred of, and plus at the same time as well, how helpful is it? Because, that way of life, as Crucible touched upon, is far, far gone. Like nobody treats people that way. Slavery is gone now. So what's the point in teaching that? Yeah, what's the point in teaching people those theories when you could teach them more about more recent history and what's actually affecting them today?
But see, okay, but and Shy Lady, I know you are waiting, and thank you for waiting patiently. I'm sorry, but I had to laugh because there may not be slaves, but again, I want to know for people who look like me, and when do we learn about our history? I don't want my like I said, I don't want my child learning about um you know um Thomas Jefferson unless you tell the entire story of Thomas Jefferson. Because what you're basically saying is whitewashing, and you keep saying that is hate, is hate, is hate. Is Yes, it was a very dark part of history. Every country, every culture has a dark part, but you cannot not talk about it, because a lot of those things still do exist today. There may not be slaves, but you have 16-year-olds in high school who are bringing nooses to school to lynch black kids or make fun of them. So there is a teaching moment there, and you can make it into a teaching moment instead of a moment of just hatred. So and that goes with anything, not just racism. I'm talking about with gay, with transgender, disabilities, whatever. I mean, you still have people who are I mean, I'm just saying that's across the board. So um I will come back to you, Bob. Shy Lady, thank you for waiting patiently. You still there?
Yeah. Hey, no problem. I wanted to address the topic about banning the books, and I know people have different opinions. Some people are for it, some people are against it. But as a child, back in the back in high school, I'm sure mostly everybody on this panel had to, or either listening in, read at least one or two of those books, or if not all of those books that were listed. But I do want to say that as a child who had to read Gone with the Wind, it left an indelible effect on me. And that's a book that I would like banned. That is one I would like banned because the humiliation and the racist comments and snickering and hearing the N word over and over every time we were asked to read a certain section, that was not a comfortable feeling for me. And not just for me hearing it, but just to think about the fact that the people in the classroom thought I was less than them because of who my descendants were. They looked at me as though I was nothing, and they thought it was funny. And I didn't like that feeling at all. I didn't like it.
But you know what, Shy Lady, Crucible, I do see you, but I am going to go to Crazy Lady before I come over to you. Shy Lady, I understand what you're saying, because I read Gone with the Wind, and I can distinctly remember sitting in when I was in college and in my English class, and usually when you're one of few, whatever. You get the comments and you get the snickering, whatever. But um, again, to me, you turn it into a teaching moment. You're looking, because when people laugh and do that, I mean, they're ignorant, but I turn it and I flip it right back onto them, and then I shut them down. And you're making a good point, and I'm reading in your comment, you said the Holocaust was a part of history and is still being taught in history, and the reading of Diary of Anne Frank. So on one hand, you can say, well, you don't want to hear Gone with the Wind because of the verbiage and everything and the tone of the book. But I can also say, do Jewish people want to, hear about the Holocaust and Diary of Anne Frank and some of the names that that they were called? History is dark. History has good things and it has, and it has bad things. But banning it is not going to mean that someone is still not going to go to school or go to work and call someone out of their name.
That's true, but I'm just saying the effects that it had on people like me who were in the classroom where a teacher did not use the moment to teach anything about that, and she allowed that whole word to be used, and she allowed the snickering.
But and again, I understand that. I've had teachers like I've had teachers like that. I've had bosses like that. I mean, we worked at a place where that was full of that.
Hmm.
So I mean, but again, it's like, again, this is where I'm saying, where people say that this is not going on. It is. It may not be in ways of, reading a book or something like that, but these are things that certain groups of people will continue to deal with their entire life. So yeah, I mean, I have to disagree with you, but I totally understand what you're saying, because I've been there, and I'm still there. So I don't know.
I do want to say this. I think earlier in the panel, someone said that uh, that's just what people said back then. That didn't make it right, and it still doesn't make it right to this day. It wasn't right back then when they said it, and it still isn't right. People were still uncomfortable when people said those things that were um, common, where people heard those things all the time. People could say that, oh, that's how they talked back then. It wasn't right then.
No, no.
So just as lynching wasn't right. Yeah, they did it. It was a common thing in the South. But did that make it right? No, no.
Point taken. Crazy lady. Thank you very much for waiting patiently.
Can you hear me?
You're a little faint.
Okay, hold on. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. You start. Okay, if you start banning books and burning books. What are you killing? You're killing ideas, people's thoughts, whether we agree with them or not. Check it out. Only those that are afraid will do the banning and the burn. Because, like, uh, because when you're burning a book or banning a book, you're trying to stop whatever that author's idea or whatever was created. You're trying to kill it. You're trying to kill that thought off. Like you said, everyone's history is tainted. Okay, in Germany, and I did go to German schools. They do teach Adolf Hitler, and they do instill in the future generations of how it was wrong. you know each country is going to show its importance of its own history. Like England, dude, according to them, it was like some Lord Byron's fault that got sent over here, that was like the whole downfall of it all, of America leaving anyway. But so it's like history is written by the winners in a way, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And uh we just, like you said, I mean, you got to know the bad with the good, because if you don't know the bad, check it out, it will happen again. You know,
And
it
that's
will.
what I think a lot of people don't understand, that it will happen again, and it's already happening. It is already happening, and it was happening way before the summer of 2020.
Yeah.
So the fact that, every and it's like a cycle. Every generation goes through it. You
And living in
know,
America, that's supposed to be our freedom, is a freedom of speech. Whether we agree with the other person's ideas or whatever, uh, is irrelevant. Okay, I mean, check it out. If you don't agree with them, don't listen to them. Don't read their shit. Walk away.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
and yeah,
start your own movement against them. Whatever, but that is why. Check it out. That is why our servicemen, you know, are in the military that go and to war is for our freedoms. That's why all our soldiers that have passed away, that is why they passed away, is for our freedoms. End of story. There's,
okay, all right.
don't be.
Crucible, I know you wanted to say something, and everyone on the panel, I just wanted to go around the room so everyone would have a chance. You guys can jump in, just don't, talk over each other. But Ba, I did want to address the freedom of speech with you on that first show where you said that Shy Lady and Chill and I, were pushing back. I want to give you the context of what I was referring to, and I said I don't believe that a person should be able to get up and on a mic and look at a particular group of people and call them nasty names. I don't think that you should be able to do that. Reading nasty names in a book, but when people are following you down the street and they're calling you nasty names, no. I don't think that people, on one of our shows on Friendly Differences, one of our guests said that you should be able to use whatever word you want to use. So I'm just going to come out here and I'm going to say it. And again, guys are going to say, here goes solid. But I said at the beginning of the show that this show I may say stuff and other people may say stuff that you may not want to hear, whatever, but I'm going to ask you. So some people feel that they should be able to say in terms of freedom of speech, and I'm talking about vocally freedom of speech, and you think that you should be able to say whatever, would you call me the N word and think that it's okay? Should I call a Jewish person the K word and think that it's okay, or call a Latino person the S word and think and think that it's okay? That's the context in terms of when we were talking about freedom of speech. That's the context that I was talking about. Crucible. Oh, I'm sorry. Crazy lady.
I was going to say, on the N word, trust me, if I call someone that word, it's because they are. And that word does not mean man of color. That means like a low life, piece of crap.
Technically, yes, but historically, no.
Yeah, no. Historically, no. I'm not going to call a person color that word. Crazy.
And just to let people know, even from people who look like me, you better not use that word towards me. And everybody who knows me knows that is no.
Because I'm going to admit, I have called a couple of people that word, but they were seriously. They're like, I'm all like, well, you know what? Look up the word. He's not a man of color.
But again, and I understand what you're saying, crazy lady. But historically,
any remark toward like another person, like race, creed, or whatever, it's uncivilized. Truly, we're civilized human beings. We should be able to like move past that. I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you can't, well then, you guys are gonna be, just repeating yourselves over and over until you get it right.
And Brina says part of why it's crucial to be part of your child's lesson plan. You have to know what they're learning and see how they've absorbed it. Very good point. Doss says, well said regarding whitewashing history. See, everybody saying hello to each other. Okay, Crucible.
Yeah, just real quick. I was the one on the panel who said that that's the way people spoke back then. But I think I made a pretty clear point of saying I don't condone it then and I don't condone it now. So I just wanted to set the record straight there. But just two real quick points on the book banning thing. Banning anything is in the mind and the eye of the person who wants to ban it, which means by definition it's a very subjective thing. It's not objective. There's not one clear standard. What's pornographic to me may not be pornographic to you. What's immoral to me might not be immoral to you. What's racist to me might not be racist to you. So if I want to ban this book, then you're going to come back and say, well, okay, well, I want this book banned. Next thing we know, we've got thousands of empty libraries across the country because each person is using their own personal standard, which is kind of chaos. But the next step in that progression is the authoritarian element that nobody seems to be recognizing here, that who bans books? It's not individuals. It's not you, Solid. It's not me. It's not Ba. It's not Shy Lady. We can't ban books. You know who bans them? The government. And when they start taking more and more control, and I'm not going to veer off into a government, conversation here, I promise, but we're giving them more and more control over our lives to be the arbiters of morality, decency, racism, historical context. It's all in their hands now, and we're letting them decide. We the people, like Crazy Lady was saying. People died for our freedoms, and for the government to take them away because they have got this authoritarian mindset that they have to control everything. That's a very slippery slope. Today it's books. What's next? What we can eat, what we can drive. That's already coming. What we can wear. I don't want to go down that path at all. It's books today and Katie bar the door tomorrow.
Well, Crucible, there are some libraries across the country that have been banning books for years. So, and depending upon where you live in the country, there are some books you will not find on the shelves because they are not allowed, and other books, that are. So in terms of being able to go to a library and being able to get a book, maybe you can, maybe you can't. So, Ba, are you still there? Or?
Yeah, I guess I was just to push back a little bit on what you were saying about the context of the first show. Is the reason why I'm struggling is because it sounds to me like you're okay with books saying these things, but you're not okay with people saying these things. And I think for me that's kind of telling, because you're okay with, obviously with the black slavery narrative being taught to kids or to anyone individually over people's, ability to openly talk about these things, and that's why I'm confused as to why you think those are different. And then to echo what the only Crazy Lady was saying is that we have the choice to put our kids to certain schools and also pull them out of classes. And I certainly, for one, don't want my kids being taught inaccurate history, leaving things out. Like I've learned so much more in the last few years about history that you will not get taught in schools. And while we're on this subject, I didn't know about, blacks owning blacks as slaves. I didn't know where slavery started. I wasn't taught any of this stuff in school. And there's a lot of context that's left out, just like you were saying about, Washington and all these people that were taught about in school, and they only teach one side. They're also doing that with slavery. So we all have the choice to read books or not read books or pull our kids out of school. So ultimately that's where I would push the narrative, and I agree with Crucible. It is the government who are banning these books, and when you sit your kids down in a classroom and you're basically forcing them to read these books, that's where I draw the line.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting that that you say that, because if you're going to teach slavery, and yes, black people did own slaves in Africa. Yes, absolutely. Teach that. Teach it. Because it seems like that you're hung up on, don't teach slavery, whatever. But slavery happened. And you say you don't want to leave anything out. Well, then don't leave it out. Those things did happen. The Holocaust did happen. What's going on in some of these countries and what went on, way back when in some of those countries, that stuff did happen. Don't leave it out. So, like Crazy Lady says, if you don't want, if on Monday morning, Mrs. Jones says, well, we're going to learn about this, then take your kid out. Everyone has the right. I think everyone should be able to remove their child or remove themselves from that thing. But going back to what I said, I don't understand what is so hard about me saying, I don't want you to call me a racial slur, call me a B, call me a C, or whatever verbally to my face. That is what I am saying. So if you're struggling with it, I can't help you with that. But reading it as a part of history, whatever, but someone's just going to come out and say it to me, or I say it to you, or whatever, or I say it to someone else just to be mean and cruel, that's completely different. Yeah, it is freedom of speech, but it's not something that you're learning in a historical fact, or you're reading a story. That's you calling me out of my name, or me calling you out of your name to humiliate me, or to be nasty, or to be mean, so forth. That's the context. So I don't know what else to say, and I'm not going to try to defend it, because that is what I meant. And if you're struggling, I can't help you with that. But I don't know if you want to say something else, or Shy Lady.
Yeah, pass the
Yeah,
mic.
go ahead. Okay. Shy Lady.
I'm good. I'm in the gym anyway. So.
No, that's fine. You always kill me with that. I'm good. All right. So let me go back to some of these questions, comments. See, I missed something here. Christine was talking about a book that he was removed. Okay. Chalet says the N-word origin means black. My GoPro is here. Stinger says, yes, it's definitely coming to Crucible, because the book I believe in has been removed from the school since the 1970s. Okay, N-word, now offensive, a contemptuous term for a black or dark-skinned person. Okay, Juju. Let's see. Thank you, everybody, for liking the show. So, I mean, Crazy Lady, did you want to add anything?
No, I think I said it all pretty much in my previous statement.
All right. So, I mean, guys, everything can be subjective, but if something is in a historical stance, just because you don't want your kid to learn it, but it happened, and like I said, the story, when I went to see, when I was with my son, and we were in New York, we went to Ellis Island, and these three white ladies were sitting there, oohing and ahhing about how, their, relatives' names were in the book and everything. And I was like, they were saying, well, don't you think this is exciting? And, and you can go find, your relative's name. And I said, my people came over on a different boat. So on one hand, you go to school and you learn about Ellis Island, but are you also going to learn about the Middle Passage? So if you're going to teach one thing, for one group of people or groups of people, you got to teach them about everybody else. And if words that are dark and offensive, and you want to take it out, isn't that the same thing as removing a statue? You're whitewashing history. So if you don't want your kid to learn it, or if you don't want to learn it, get up and leave the room. I mean, how many of us do that on TikTok and all this other stuff? There are things that are posted that I don't don't even pay attention to because I don't want to see it. I don't want to read it. There are things that people send me in videos and posts. I don't even pay attention to it because I don't want to read it. You have your choice of either reading something, watching something, going to see this movie, listen to that person talk, listening to this TV station or that TV station, whatever. Get up and leave the room. And we all have our comments about what we feel about different people. Like I said, people have their comments, what they feel about me. Like I said, oh, here goes Salad again. She got another racist show, whatever. Well, her show, whatever. Don't listen. Turn it off. But if it's history, I'm sorry. To me, you have to learn it because we will repeat it. But I don't want you walking down the street calling me out of my name, and I'm pretty sure you don't want me walking down the street calling you out of your name. So we are at the 1 hour mark. Anybody else have anything that they want to add or say? Or
Yeah, I just wanted to add something real quick, Sal. I think you were kind of going in that direction right there with your last comment. And I think the takeaway here, these conversations are always fascinating to me. I thought this was a really stimulating show. And the takeaway to me would seem to be, and we're living in a culture now where I think this is more important than ever. And I don't want to get into the whole woke culture or everything, but I think if we kept the word tolerance in mind more than we typically do, there's plenty of things. I can't walk down the street without finding something, go through the grocery store without finding something that aggravates me or pisses me off, or turn on the news. And if we're going to go through life being constantly exercised and being outraged over every damn thing that happens, and wanting to eliminate it as a result, or eliminate somebody's opinion, I mean, we don't have a civilization. We got chaos. So I think if we can tolerate a little bit more, we don't have to like each other or even like certain issues, but tolerate somebody's opinion and tolerate the fact that it happened, and erasing it isn't going to fix it. So I think open-mindedness and tolerance in all areas, regardless of whether it's books or anything with censorship. I don't like it, so I want to immediately control it and eradicate it. That's not healthy. So I think if we can walk away with the word tolerance, that might be a useful way of ending the show. But I thought it was a terrific topic today.
well, thank you. And I do want to correct one thing. When people say the woke culture, I want to be very clear of what woke means and where it came from and what it started. Woke means to be aware. So when people try to turn it around and make it into something else, woke means to be aware. And I say, stay woke. Everyone should be aware of everything, and not just what's going on in our culture in terms of books and statues and stuff. When you're walking down the street, be aware. I don't know how many times when I go to the grocery store, or if I'm coming out of the store and I am in a parking lot, I go up to women and I tell them, put your purse in the car before you start putting your groceries in the car. Because you see ladies out there who just leave their purse, while they're putting stuff, they leave it in the cart. I go up to women all the time and say that. Be aware of what is around you. That's what woke means, to be aware. Stay woke. So
well, and I don't disagree with you, Solid. But the problem with that stay with the aware thing is, once you're aware, people feel compelled to then do something about it. Awareness is one thing. Once I'm aware of something, your first reaction shouldn't be to eliminate it.
no, but then again, if you take a term and you twist it around and to mean something else, then that's what it is. And I got a topic on that coming up too. So, but I'm not going to get into, whatever, but you brought up the woke thing, and I just wanted you to know that when woke, it was to be aware, not what it turned out, what it was mangled to be. So on that note, guys, agree. I don't like this cancel culture thing, and I still don't know what that word means. I still don't know what that means. Well said. Thank you. That's why we have a Second Amendment. You're correct. to see Chris will like the show. Okay, everyone. So thank you very much for coming. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. I hope everyone got something out of the show. I know some of us agree, some of us disagree, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Ralph Williams, thank you for coming, but we are about to end the show. And on that note, everyone, go where the wind takes you. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye. And to anyone who was over on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, thank you very much. And guys, I will be debuting another show. I will have a third show. It is going to be pre-recorded, and I will tell you a little bit more about it later on, but I hope to do my first show on Sunday. I have someone lined up. So thank you everyone for coming. And Crucible, the only crazy lady, Ba, shy lady, thank you very much for coming up on the panel. And enjoy your day, everyone. Bye.